Good day to all of you. Today, let us learn about an assessment tech tool that is useful in evaluating the design, process, or final product of a program, event, activity. I am Dr. Sally Enos, Principal MES Pillai College of Education and Research, New Panvel. To begin with, let us do an activity of writing a story using the figures and objects depicted in the slide. It should be logical, relevant to the plot, and complete in all aspects. Let's look at the elements for the story writing. Observe the elements, note it down, pause the video, and take some time to write the story. Let us see how to evaluate the story that you have written by now. We will use an evaluation tool or an assessment tool called Rubrics. What is a rubric? A tool developed by instructors to assess the performance of their students. Rubrics can be prepared by anybody who is assessing either self, the peer, or the learner. What does a rubric consist of? It consists of two main aspects: dimensions and specific criteria. Then what is the difference between a checklist and a rubrics? Because even a checklist consists of dimensions and criteria. Observe both the tables and find the differences. You have observed that rubrics also gives, along with the dimensions and criteria, the gradations of quality for each dimension of the performance to be evaluated. Second, every gradation of quality has a point value. When do we use these rubrics? Rubrics as an assessment tool is best used when the content to be assessed is subjective in nature, like portfolios, essays, papers, discussions. Whereas assessment that has objective scoring, we do not use a rubric. Why use a rubric? It is going to help the learner to know what an instructor expects. It tells the students what they need to do. Learners can evaluate the quality of their own work. They can identify the specific elements an instructor uses. We can compare the qualities of performances. And of course, it improves the consistency and objectivity of grading. Let us create a rubric for the story that we have written. What are the requirements? First is identifying the dimensions or tasks that needs to be assessed in a story writing, which we call it performance. Second, we need to know the criteria on the basis of which we are going to evaluate. Keeping these two aspects in mind, there are 6 steps of creating a rubric. The first one is the performance objective. Now, what is this performance objective? Performance objective are statements which identify the specific knowledge, skill, or attitude the learner should gain and display as a result of the instructional activity. The statement should contain student performance, conditions, and criteria. It should be stated in the observable behavioral form. Second, we have the dimensions and the task. We need to identify the dimensions for story writing. What could be the possible dimensions? Give a thought to this. Spend few seconds. What could be the possible things that we need to assess in the task of story writing? I will give the example in the next slide. Now, dimensions are specific tasks that requires cognitive competencies. We go on to the third level, which is the gradations level. Gradation level is identifying the levels of gradation. You need 3 levels, 4 levels, or 5 levels. It could be poor, average, excellent. So you may have to decide the gradations. To each gradation or levels, the fourth step is to give a point value. 1, 2, 3. If there are 5 gradations, 5 point values. To each point value, you can describe the criteria for each level. What that point value means in that particular evaluation or assessment of that criteria. And finally, you create your rubric. Let's see in the next slide how a rubric is created, keeping in mind these 6 steps for story writing. These are the dimensions that needs to be assessed, like logical sequencing of ideas, ideas relevant to the plot, creativity and twist in using the given objects, number of given objects used in the plot, completeness of the plot from all aspects. It could have 5 levels, the gradations, 5 grades. Each gradation has been given a value, a point value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the criteria, that is 1 represents poor, 2 represents fair, 3 represents average, 4 represents good, and 5 represents excellent. So we have created a 5 by 5 rubrics, that is 5 rows and 5 columns. Let's take another example. This is taken from the internet on mind map rubric. We could even give descriptions for each level instead of just good, average or excellent. This is one way of doing it. One more example. Group process and participation rubric. Taken from the internet as an example. I hope you have learned how to create a rubric. In the next class, we will learn how to use a rubric for assessing any given activity. Thank you.